We're going to start a 4-part study on the 3 best Christmas tree ornaments. Now, I'm going to have some remarks before we get into it because it's not going to be comfortable. The last part of it is going to be comfortable with the exception of what the Bible actually says our Christmas tree ornaments should be. But notwithstanding, let me qualify. I am not a Scrooge, though Christmas is not my favorite time of year. The reason that it is not is simply because there is perhaps no other time aside from that of Easter when religious evil predominates the thinking of our nation and world. I believe that for the most part, Christmas is an absolutely pagan holiday. Now, though it contains the name of Christ and makes references to his birth, and though there are some Christians who truly celebrate his birth, for the most part, it is intermingled and predominated with myth, paganism, heathen practices. Now, as I say that, it has dawned on me that this ministry has had an effect on lives, and lives are changed because of what I presented on Christmas before. But please note, we are not legalists, so that if you go to your family and they have Santa Claus there, you can just sit back and be relaxed. You don't have to say, "You're a heathen idolater," and disrupt your Christmas you don't have to do that. We're not legalists, and if somebody gives you a Christmas gift that may have some of the things I'm talking about on them, please accept it with joy and gratitude and thanksgiving, and wear it to the best of your ability, but don't wear it when I'm around. No, I'm just kidding, I'm just teasing. But you have to understand that we're not radical in this. We are firm. We're going to stand for our beliefs, but we're living in the midst of a world who they don't understand, and they'll never understand what I'm talking about unless they're first saved and get the basics of what Christianity is. And so we have to approach the world on that basis. We're going to teach that much of Christmas is idolatrous, heathen in practice. But we're not going to openly condemn people in our families, homes of our families and friends. We're not fanatics as well, so that we go about on every street corner with a placard saying "Down with Christmas" and "Down with Santa," and Rudolph had his batteries to run down or what have you, and his nose wasn't red. Be that as it may, we are biblical. And so, therefore, we must understand that when the unsaved world looks at a so-called holy day like Christmas, they are going to compromise and corrupt what should be totally holy. We're going to understand it. We're going to live among them. We're not going to openly condemn them, but we are going to try to lead them to Christ and then tell them the truth about Christmas. The world is wrong about Christmas. Now, again, for those of you, too, who work in situations where Santa Claus is the predominant figure, you've got to work with those who want to promote him. That's all there is to it. Well, you say, "Pastor, am I responsible?" No, you're simply obeying those in authority over you. And it is a touchy situation there. It's a sensitive situation, but you have to understand that your boss wants to promote his wares, and he does so through Santa Claus, and you're going to have to say, "Fine, I'm going to obey those in authority." It's his responsibility, not yours. In other words, when you're working for somebody who says, "I want you to put up Christmas lights and an image of Santa Claus," do what he says unless you're ready to quit your job. Now, that's the way you should need to look at it. But that doesn't mean you believe in what he's doing. You're simply taking orders while on the job. But when you're on your personal time, then it's up to you to get rid of the idols and images of Christmas that are wrong. Now, not all Christmas ornaments are wrong. Please understand that. And if you have a tree, and I've seen some generic trees. I think Christmas is now becoming politically correct or something, I'm not sure. But I've seen some generic trees that are absolutely beautiful. I've enjoyed looking at them. And they have no figures or figurines as such. And that's fine. Do you want to do that? But there are wrong Christmas ornaments. Now, what we're going to do is, first of all, give you a definition of what an ornament is. It is both a secular and a biblical definition combined. These have both good and bad connotations. So you understand an ornament in and of itself isn't necessarily wrong, but sometimes what it connotes or what it portrays is wrong. So what is an ornament then? We're going to define it. Any accessories. Ladies, you are renowned for your ornamentation with your fashions and attire. Placed or worn on a person or thing used to, number one, improve its general appearance. Now, 2 Samuel 1 verse 24 gives us a Bible example of this. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet, with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. In other words, they were decked out like Christmas trees. Doesn't say that, but that's what it implies. Jeremiah chapter 2. Jeremiah chapter 2. Again, proving the point that an ornament is to decorate something to enhance its outlook. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 23. Let's see. I'm not 23. I read it backwards. 32. Now, that's I've got Christmas dyslexia with eyes and speech. Oh, goodness. Can a maid forget her ornaments? Nothing is impossible with God. That's true. And it is impossible for even God to make a maid forget the accoutrements of her fashion. It has to be matched. And that's what it's saying here. Can a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me. Why trimmest? Now, here is a reference to an ornament on ladies being trimmings, just like the tree. Okay? Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? But the point we're making is that it's an accessory in order to make something more beautiful than what it is. And that's very diplomatic. There's no hope for men. That's why we don't have any of the trimmings on the tree or on us. Ezekiel chapter 16. Now, actually, before this study is over, you're going to see that there were some men who had these ornaments, trimmings, decorations, and they were wrong. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse number 11. I decked thee. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. All of this is Christmas language taken right from the Bible with regard to ornamentation. What is worn on the outside. I clothed thee also with broidered work, verse 10. I girded thee about with silk. I decked thee, verse 11, with ornaments, bracelets on the hands, chains on your neck, jewels in your forehead, earrings in your ears. Please keep that in mind. An earring is an ornament. Beautiful crown upon your head. You were decked with gold and silver. Your raiment was of fine linen, silk embroidered work. Okay. Also, let's just skip the one reference there and go back to 1 Peter chapter 3. I point this out because for the ladies, all of the emphasis here has been on the outer ornamentation. Actually, as far as God is concerned, verse 3, whose adorning, let it not be that outward ornamentation of emphasis on hairdos. That's overemphasis. I am not saying you should not have your due. I saw an angel this morning who had his hair dude and looked good. That's the only real permanent I've ever seen. Do you ever ask yourself why they call them permanents when they only last to your next haircut? Anyway, that's just a little inside joke because we have some hairstylists here. But I guarantee you that angel never needs a trim. He has a permanent do. And I'm just teasing. Wearing of gold, putting on of apparel, the ornamentation, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. Here is inner beauty. Regardless of what you are on the outside, ladies and gentlemen, you can have the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit in the sight of God. And he says, I like that best of all. The outer is changeable and corruptible, but if it's the inner man of the heart, it doesn't change. It lasts. So the second point then that we are talking about is an ornament aids in producing a desired general effect. And that is, you want to celebrate, you have certain ornaments that enhance the celebration. They are to the point or to the occasion. Now, for example, what type of flowers do we have here? The poinsettia. What is that? Well, that's a Christmas flower. That's to the occasion. Now, you don't need them to celebrate Christmas, but it enhances the general effect. Once you have them here, you come into church and say, oh, is it Christmas? You knew it was when we celebrated December birthdays. Okay. Point 3. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 28. Exodus chapter 28. The third point is they aid in accomplishing a specific task. You can have some ornaments, like Aaron's accoutrements for his ministry, his priesthood, that are used to aid in worship. There are some, like those of harlot, that help in seduction. You know, they are... Most harlots, when you go to the street corner, at least that's the way they're portrayed, are not dressed up like a Puritan with dresses down to their ankles and so forth. They are in attire or ornaments that enhance their seduction powers. Chapter 28, Exodus, verse 1. Take to thee Aaron your brother and his sons with them, from among the children of Israel, that they might minister unto me in the priest's office. Thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother, for glory and beauty. These were ornaments. And you'll speak to those who are wise-hearted, and they have that are filled with the spirit of wisdom, to make Aaron garments, or literally ornaments, to consecrate him, that he might minister unto me in the priest's office. Note verse 40. You'll make coats, girdles, bonnets for glory and beauty. And you'll consecrate them, that is, the ornaments, sanctify them, that they might minister in the priest's office. Make them pants to cover their nakedness, and so forth. It shall be, last part of verse 43, a statute forever to him and his seed after him. He had to have these ornaments. Now, it's just like with us in salvation. Turn to Isaiah chapter 61. Verse number 6 says, Ye shall be named the priests of the Lord. Men shall call you the ministers of our God. And like Aaron, we have, or at least this is Israel nationally, but we too have ornaments of salvation. Verse 10, I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God. He hath clothed me with the garments of salvation. He covered me with a robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorns herself with jewels. So these things aid in our worship and in our relationship with God himself. Now, we're not far from Jeremiah. Let's simply turn there. Jeremiah chapter 4. And verse number 30. Jeremiah chapter 4 and verse number 30, where it says, And when thou art spoiled, and this point has to do with seduction, what will you do? Though you clothe yourself with crimson, though you deck thee with ornaments of gold, though you rentest thy face with painting, in vain shalt thou make thyself fair, thy lovers will despise thee. They will seek thy life. Now the point we're making with this verse is that there are certain ornaments used for seduction. Again in Hosea chapter 2, verses 13 and 14. I will visit upon her the days of Balaam, wherein she burned incense to them, and she decked herself with her. Note, the ornaments of harlotry and idolatry. She decked herself with earrings, jewels. She went after her lovers and forgot me. So the point we're making that ornaments can help you in a specific task to accomplish it. First of all, Aaron couldn't accomplish ministering in the priesthood without the ornaments of his office. You cannot accomplish anything Christian unless you have the attire, the ornamentation of salvation, which he decks you out freely by his grace. But there are also those who use ornaments for seduction, both physical by way and sexual, and also idolatrous seduction. You'll note that this woman here decked herself out in her earrings to offer to Baal. Now you'll remember that Baal worship, as well as the others, had to do with the Phallic cult, where they would actually worship their god by having sex in the temples, in their churches. All right. Let's go to the last point here. Proverbs chapter 1. It's any accessory that is worn by someone to improve their general appearance or the appearance of a place or an event, to produce a desired general effect, to aid in accomplishing a specific task, and then fourthly and finally, when you wear certain fashions or ornaments, you're making a definite statement. I saw in the news where the Material Girl, Madonna, wore an Adidas dress, of all things, to a formal function with Adidas tennis shoes. And now everybody is running to get an Adidas dress. How can you imagine? Only Madonna could do that. And here's what they said. She always makes real fashion statements. Now, it's just like the lady who the pastor asked her, where'd you get that hat? And she said, I was down at the dumps the other day and I went out and got me this hat. And he said, I knew that's where you got it. Anyway, if you like down in the dumps fashions, Madonna is your Material Girl, your role model. But that's what it is. Fashion statement, what you wear. But again, what you put up for Christmas also tells others what you believe, and that's the point of this study. And also it can tell what your status is. Note Proverbs 1, verses 8 and 9. My son, hear instruction from your father, forsake not the law of your mother. They shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. Chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. Wisdom is the principal thing, Bible doctrine. Get wisdom with all you're getting. Get spiritual understanding especially. Exalt her, she'll promote you. Here's your status. She'll bring you honor when you embrace her. She'll give to your head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory she'll deliver to you. But now, what we're going to do from this point on is especially note the earring. Now, just let me make a little qualified remark at this point. Not all earrings are wrong or bad. And if you think that this is what our study is about, you've missed the boat. You're going to have to reschedule to get on the next outgoing ship. But in ancient days, earrings were idols. Now that's our first point, but before we look at that, I want you to see that an earring is a dangling ornament. And I ask the question, in your mind, of all of the ornamentation that a woman, and now men, of course in ancient times they wore them too, what particular accoutrement of ladies' fashions best illustrates a Christmas ornament on a tree? An earring. And just in case you don't know, it's an earring, okay? You have the little hooks, and they're in the bulbs or the figurines, and you put them on you hook them, okay? Maybe you don't do that. What do you have? Do you have schnooks do your tree or something? You put the little hook in there, okay. Don't lose me. You'll miss the whole point if you don't understand that an earring and a Christmas tree ornament are one and the same thing. Because I'm telling you, biblically they are. Except there are some good earrings and there are some good Christmas tree ornaments. But there are also some bad ones of both types. Proverbs 25:12. Proverbs 25:12. As an earring of gold, the and should be translated, and that is, or this is the example, an ornament of fine gold. So it's the ornament's referring back to the earring. So is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. Okay? Isaiah chapter 3. Verse number 18. In that day the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments. Now, you remember that ladies in the ancient world used to have dowries. They were always afraid that their husbands were going to divorce them, and they didn't have divorce courts that were sympathetic to them like they should be in this day and age, like the Lord commented on it. You burn the toast and you divorce, she burns the toast and you divorce your wife. That's ridiculous. But because the Mideastern men were always, they had their harems and, there was no real interpersonal relationship and love going on there, they wore their dowries. But also dowries proved to be means of seduction as well. And they would make their little bell sounds, and they would attract the men. And they would hang these things on their forehead, on their ears, around their necks, the bracelets and so forth. You've all seen the pictures. Okay. But they're tinkling ornaments. Now, earrings were tinkling ornaments as well. As they dangled, they would hit one another because they were metal in most cases. In some cases, they would make the noise. Around their feet, chains, verse 19, bracelets, mufflers, bonnets, ornaments of the legs, ornaments of the heads, the tablets, and note, the earrings. One more portion to show you that earrings are ornaments. Isaiah 61, verse 10. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful unto my God. Clothed with the garments of salvation, he covered me with the robe of righteousness, as the bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, and the ornaments of the bride herself with her jewels. Now, that is a reference to her total attire, which included earrings. Earrings were considered the dangling ornaments in order to do what? Improve her appearance, to produce the desired general effect on the wedding day, even to make it more beautiful and dreamy and romantic, to accomplish a specific task, like Aaron's robes, that is, helped in his worship, but they could also be used for seduction, and then to make a definite fashion statement of what I believe. So what you had on, what you had in your house, what you took to your church or temple were all dangling ornaments that made statements of who and what you believed in. Now, the first point that we want to make here, as we turn to the book of Genesis, chapter 35, is that in ancient times, earrings were idols, or symbols of idol worship in miniature. We have two Bible examples. Genesis 35, 1 through 4. God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel, dwell there. Make thee an altar to God, that appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau." Jacob said to his household and all that were with him, "Put away the strange gods." Now, this is extremely important because we're going to see what those strange gods were in just one moment. But the first thing we want to do is look at the word nekar. It is strange in this sense: foreign, alien, or false to the religion of Jehovah, the God of Jacob, the God that appeared to Jacob. Jacob, this is false to the practices and the religious observances that you and I have. But they were recognized and regarded by those of other nations. Now, this is the point with Santa Claus. Santa Claus is an idol, pure and simple. No doubt about it. He is foreign to our worship as Christians. But we understand that other people believe in him, teach their children to look to him, to pray to him. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. I thought only God was omniscient. He knows if you've been bad or good, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So be good for goodness sake. If you're good, humanly speaking, then you get your rewards from the world. And it takes us right back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, he understood that they were gods, but they were strange to him, and that the true and living God says, do away with them. Okay, now, the thing we want to see is that Moffat, a Bible translator, says this with regard to these strange gods. They are expressions of heathen belief, a kind of good luck charm, an amulet, a charm which honored a certain idol and was meant to obtain its protection, power, and prosperity. You weren't at church to worship the biggie, as it was set before you, the big Baal image, which was monstrous. So you simply wore a little image of Baal on your earring or carried it in your hand, in your pocket. It was easily accessible to say, here's my enemy, and pull out your God and say, okay, God, help me. Now, where were they found? Put away the strange gods from among you and be clean and change your garments. Let us arise and go to Bethel. I'll make thee an altar, and you answered me in the day of my distress. And they, meaning the men who were with him, gave to Jacob, verse 4, all the strange gods which were, two places, in their hand. In other words, they took them from their satchels or what have you, their pockets, their bags, and all their earrings which were in their ears. And Jacob buried them. Their gods were their earrings, and their gods were those little images, those wee tiny little replicas, representations of the big idol that they would go to worship on their certain specific holy days. God calls them strange gods. That's what I call Santa Claus. He's a strange God. He is revered, respected, looked to by those of the world. But we should know better. Now, they were in their hand and in their ears. Clark says this about the strange god. Earrings were worn as amulets or charms, first consecrated to some god, formed under some constellation, on which, quote, magical characters and images of the idol itself were drawn. Have you ever seen ladies wear Santa Claus earrings? Wonder where they got that idea. To wear the image of an idol on their person and then come to the place where he is revered and look to him to provide the good things for themselves and their children. They got it right here from the small miniature images of their God held in their hands and worn in their ears as the Christmas tree ornaments. Get it? You say, okay, this is dimensions in doctrine. Now we want you to get the picture. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 3. Now, please note, I'm hitting all of the negative side of this first, then we'll get the positive. But the positive is probably not much better for some when you understand what the Bible says a real Christmas ornament ought to be. But I'll not fault you for wanting to put up the pretty bulbs and the embroidered work and that sort of thing. The colored lights, that's okay. Exodus chapter 3, verse 20. Now we have to get this background in order to understand it. We probably won't get through this point, this particular sub-point before our time runs out, but we'll take it up in the after service and then tonight. I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with my wonders, which I will do in the midst thereof. And after that, Pharaoh will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall come to pass that when ye go out, ye shall not go empty, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor and her that sojourneth in her house jewels of silver, jewels of gold, raiment, and ye shall put them on, note, your sons and your daughters, and you'll spoil the Egyptians. Now you will remember that they got from the ladies especially earrings, and I'll show you how we know that in a bit. Chapter 11. Chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. I'll bring one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go. He'll thrust you out altogether hence. Speak now in the ears of the people, let every man borrow of his neighbor, every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. They were actually simply getting back wages for being enslaved wrongly by the Egyptians. Chapter 12, verse 35 and 36. The children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, that they lent them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Okay, now, the next reference we have to this is in chapter 32. Verses 1 through 8 will cover this point. Now, here is the background, and I just have a few moments We'll take this up in the after service. Background of chapter 32. They left Egypt loaded with goods. Now, you'll remember they didn't have the nearest Atlas van line to load their trucks up and everything and to take them across the desert. They had to carry with them on their own person. Or if they had animals, and they were very poor, some of them did, they had to carry with them on their own person these jewels that they just got from the Egyptians. But please remember the point. The Egyptians were idolaters par excellence. And so if they got jewels and earrings, what was on those earrings? The gods that the Egyptians worshipped. The very gods that provided prosperity for Egypt, now trounced by God himself, were taken and given to the Israelis to convert later on. Later, they were going to contribute to the collective pot there to provide temple gold and silver and so forth. That's what it was for. But instead of giving it to the temple of Jehovah, before they got to the promised land, Moses was up on Mount Sinai. Verse 1, and the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount. And the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. The word there is Elohim. It can be a reference to the true God in his Trinity, or simply deities, objects of worship, devotion, and veneration. Make us gods. Now, I wonder, where do you suppose they got the idea for a golden calf? Somebody took his earring off and said, hey, this one will do. Out of the panoply of gods they've got down there, out of all of them, not panoply, Parthenon of gods, the collection of deities they have down there. This one is just as good as any of them. And look, he's right there on my earring. Let's make a golden calf. It's the worship of the bull, the Apis bull of Memphis, he is called, and he was worshipped.